We have a 7-mile journey to Dunedin. We will be passing through a lovely historical little village called Port Chalmers. It's just around the corner. So this is basically the gateway to Dunedin by the sea. Chalmers here, named after the Reverend Chalmers, Presbyterian Scottish minister. Dunedin is a Scottish town, founded by the Scottish, way back in 1848. So 48 was before the Victorian Gold Rush, I believe. And that concludes the tour of Port Chalmers. It's rather small. But a lot of houses though, a lot of people live here, probably a couple of thousand. Our city has 134,000 people, 134, that's big. For my American guest, 1,279 square miles. You're now looking at the beautiful Otago harbour here. Now it's almost like a fjord, except it's not created by glaciers. This harbour was created by volcanoes, in fact. We are now in a crater, literally, and the hills around us is what remains of the Dunedin volcano. But don't worry, it's very extinct, 10 million years old. So the hills up here on the right side, some of them are 2,200 feet, it's about 700 metres, and on the left-hand side, 1,000 feet, about 330 metres, average height of the hills on that side. That's the eastern rim of the crater. Over here's the western rim. Here's a small volcano right across from us now, a triangular shaped hill with a kind of small volcano. But you can imagine how big this volcano was. We are in the crater now. Big one, but not a circular shape, more of an oblong, like a sausage. To our left, folks, we're passing sheep on the right, sheep on the right. Lots of sheep, 30 million sheep in New Zealand, and only 5 million people. 12 million dairy cows. So we're following a cycle track, or pedestrian, along this left-hand side. You can cycle, walk all the way to Dunedin. They've just finished this, or nearly finished. It's $50 million for 7 miles. Quite expensive. There's a lot of underground stuff like pipes and cables and hidden costs. And there's a railway line following along the road too. It's an historical old line, goes back to 1873. The first railway passenger line in Dunedin. Beautiful calm day in Dunedin. 16 degrees outside, very calm, not much wind. Typical sort of a spring day, except spring is our rainy season. So this is just the beginning of summer, end of spring, and we get more rain in spring than in winter. We get about a metre a year on the east coast here. You're on the east coast now of the world's 12th largest island, the South Island. Water temperature is about a cool 15. So it's not too cold, not too hot. Now you're in a part of the world, folks, that we call the temperate zone of the planet. Temperate means it's not extreme, just right. Nice median temperature, which is about 15 degrees all year round. That's the average all year round. So maybe 10 in winter, 20 in summer. Average 15. Coincidentally, that's the average temperature of planet Earth. If you take all the temperatures and get an average, it's 15, same as here. Because of our cool temperature, we don't have mosquitoes or anything that bites, no poisonous spiders or snakes or anything. Very, very kind of safe. The harbour's quite big. It's 21 kilometres in length, or 13 miles, nearly a mile at the widest point, 35 square kilometres of water, or surface area. So it's quite a big body of water. How deep is the harbour? Not very deep at all. The channel is 8 metres, which is the deepest point. You can see the channel there, the green and the red pegs sticking up. 8 metres of that channel has to get dredged pretty much every day. The rest of the harbour's shallow down here, but back at Port Chalmers and out to the heads it gets quite deep, but no deeper than 50 feet. Now we're kind of fortunate in Dunedin because of our locality to Antarctica, we're about 2,700 nautical miles north of Antarctica, and we have penguins and albatross and sea lions and all those type of things. Kind of fortunate you can see all that wildlife on the other side of the hills to our left. There's the coastline on the other side there. That is where we'll find all the penguins and sea lions, leopard seals, fur seals, even the southern sea elephant. So we're famous for those sort of things, like penguins especially, seabirds and the mammals of the sea, whales, dolphins, all that. But the largest building in Dunedin, and it is our big stadium, used mostly for rugby, our national sport. You know, the All Blacks, the haka, kamate. This is one of the world's best stadiums for playing rugby. It's really great. It's got a roof on it. It seats 30,000, cost $200 million, took about 3 years to build it. Ready for business in 2011. The unique thing about the stadium is it's got 75% actual real grass and 25% artificial grass. The real grass there. For those that are interested in rugby union, that is the home of the Otago Highlanders, who play, you know, the Super 15 teams. We have a great soccer field too here on the right. We had a FIFA Under-20 World Cup in New Zealand, and the Women's FIFA World Cup was held with 6 matches in Dunedin. So over here on the right is where the team's trained. This is an artificial grass field over here. So soccer is also popular, but not like rugby, not the same. Rugby union, yes, we have rugby union as well. Sorry, rugby league, I meant, rugby league. But it's not as big as in Australia, it's massive over there. This is the campus of the New Zealand's oldest university now. We're driving through it. The Otago University, 1869 it was founded. Not too long after the first people arrived in Dunedin from Scotland. And at the moment it's deserted because the students aren't here now. Most of them come from overseas or out of town, you know, different parts of New Zealand. 20,000 of them. So we're passing Trump Tower now on the right. Trump Tower. So this is student residential. These old houses is where the students live. This is the business school. Get a Bachelor of Commerce in this building. Very quiet here at the moment. The first year students have to live in a dormitory, and on the left here coming up is all these dormitories. Second year students, they can live in one of the houses here. the Hilton 5-star. Now this would be the dirtiest part of town with rubbish, broken glass and stuff, but it's relatively clean now because most of the students aren't here. So when they are here, especially on the weekends, there's lots of litter and broken beer bottles and stuff like that. When we drive around Dunedin, it's hard to find litter. It's a really clean place. The local government, called the Dunedin City Council, they pay people to pick up rubbish and stuff like that, do all the gardens and make the place look pretty. Yeah. So we're leaving the university and heading through the oldest botanical gardens in the country now, 1863. There's a road that cuts through the middle of it. So we're going to head up that road now. There might be a few rhododendrons left over, these beautiful flowers you see around the place. Rhododendron, but they've kind of finished now. It's the end of the flowering season. Look at the old house there. Spooky, looks like something from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. You're going to see some beautiful old mansions today on our travels. So this botanical gardens is 72 acres. We're driving through a lot of native forest, and manuka, in which you get the manuka honey, is our most common tree on the east coast of this island. Manuka. And that is actually flowering at the moment. There's some just here on the right, the little white flowers, see? Dark green leaves. Tomb of the former richest man in New Zealand, William Larnach, famous for his castle, the only castle in the country is here. So here's a lot of manuka here on the right. So see these trees with the kind of prominent brown trunk beside us? That's all manuka. These make the honey medicinal, antifungal, antiseptic, antibiotic, antimicrobial, good stuff. Remember at the port we saw those logs of wood that I told you is one of our industries? Here's some big living ones here, these great big trees. That's the same tree that we saw at the wharf, but planted in 1863, pretty large. They're the Monterey pines, or Pinus radiata, not particularly a hardwood. What happens to our logs, they go on a ship heading to China and get made mostly into paper. It's a big industry in Dunedin and our country, forestry. It's in the top 5 of local industries that make the most money for our city. Folks, can you see that big tree on the left? Just here? Quite big. Golden cypress. Beautiful, isn't it? So that's another Californian tree called the golden cypress. And we introduced those trees into our country for hedges, because when you cut the hedge, it's nice and thick, dense. So that's the Monterey cypress. Lots of manuka here on the left, right beside us. Through the bush, there's lots of walking tracks. You can run, walk, but no dogs allowed. You can't walk your dog through the botanical gardens tracks. So all of this on the left is still the gardens. Down the bottom of the hill, we'll see a little bit more kind of not so thick bush, more kind of big exotic trees. Just down here now. You might see a little bit over the hedge there. A few sculptures and water fountains and not many rhododendrons in flower, they're all finished now. Just a couple there on the left, just finishing flowering. Another few days there'll be just no flowers at all. A couple of weeks ago it was a beautiful floral display of all the different coloured rhodies. They grow really well in Dunedin because of our cool climate. They're a tree from the Himalayas, so they don't grow in tropical places. Dunedin is the capital of many things in New Zealand. Capital of rhododendrons, capital of penguins, capital of marine mammals, capital of old buildings. You know, we are quite an important city in the country, especially culturally. Now I'm driving you through a little suburb, typical old suburb. Again, mostly old buildings, few shops, services the local suburb, residential. This is an intermediate school for the age group of about 11 and 12 year olds. This one on the right. It's a special age, so you need special education for that age group. There's a Roman Catholic school on the left, primary school. Lots of schools and churches in Dunedin. There's a nice little church here on the left with the nice roses just here. Quite nice, very small, but pretty. Now the main reason I'm bringing you down this valley, is you can see we're in a bit of a valley, is to show you some of the steep streets we've got in Dunedin. And they're all on the right hand side. Here it's flat, up here it's hilly, lots of steep streets. Have a look at them as we go past. And as we move further down, they get steeper and steeper and steeper. Have a look. Now further down, I'm going to show you the steepest street in the world. So I'll drive past very slowly. I'm not allowed to stop. But if the folks on the right want to take a photo now, get your cameras ready, and I'll go as slow as I can so you guys can get your photo. Then I'll do a U-turn and you guys on the left can get your photo, okay? It's just coming up in the next minute or so. Here's a primary school, the War Memorial. It's quite an old school. It has to be because it's got a First World War war memorial with all the pupils who went to the war who didn't come home. So their names are engraved on the Roll of Honour. Right, get ready folks on the right. I'm driving past the Baldwin Street, the world's steepest street. made of concrete. Because in the winter, when we get frost, concrete doesn't freeze as quickly as the asphalt. You keep looking at it and you realise how steep it is from a different angle here. I've seen a guy unicycle straight up on a unicycle. Didn't zigzag, he just went straight up. People in Dunedin are quite fit, you know, walking around all these hills. Or cycling. I'll do a U-E, folks on the left can see that street. The average house price is 620,000 New Zealand dollars. That's a lot cheaper than Auckland. Their average is $1 million. Really expensive place. Down here in the south it's much cheaper to buy land and houses. So this area where I'm doing this U-turn is under average. It's not a flash area at all. You get a house here for $500,000 probably. Easy. Maybe less. Lots of these little old villas, wooden houses that are built around the start of the 1900s. You can get them quite cheap. Like this one here, see? It's got a lot of character, and if you spend a bit of money you can make it look really nice. Palestinian flag there, see? Now like this one here on the corner, this needs a bit of love with TLC. You can make this house look great. Paint job, new roof, new wiring. So that's a really character, typical old villa. And they have a 10-foot stud. Hard to heat. Most of the houses in Dunedin are insulated, you know, ceiling insulation and underfloor insulation. For when it gets winter time, 10 degrees or so, sometimes 0 degrees, -1 sometimes. This is a home for the elderly, Ross home. Retirement age is 65 here, and people who don't have family to look after them can have a little unit here and get nursing care and all that sort of stuff as well. So we look after the old folks. So folks on the left, I'm going to drive slowly past that steep street Baldwin now, so you can get a photo, but I can't actually physically stop. Famous thing about Dunedin is what you're going to see today. The architecture and the city. Every 2.86 metres you go horizontally, you go up in altitude by 1 metre. If you think about that, you realise how steep that street is. Every nearly 3 metres you go along, you go up in altitude by 1 metre. It's a lot. They have a race every festival week in Dunedin, about February. They call it the Baldwin Street Gut Buster. And it's harder to run down than up. So unlike a lot of New Zealand where they pull down all the old buildings and build, we haven't done that. We've kept the old stuff. You have to keep it restored, preserved. It costs a bit of money to do all that stuff. But it's a tourist attraction, you see. You won't find quite the same type of special architecture in any other part of New Zealand as you're going to find today. Dunedin is very green and clean. The air is beautiful and fresh. Not much pollution. You'll notice that straight away when you came off the ship, breathe in that air. It's really good air. Most of Dunedin is hills. not a lot of flat land. In fact, the early settlers had to reclaim the land. They basically filled in the harbour with rocks and built flat land. 4 square kilometres. That's a lot. And they did that in the very early days. There was no diggers or excavators. It was all done by horse and cart, pick and shovel, wheelbarrow, the old-fashioned way, the hard work. But they did it 4 square kilometres. Dunedin was, or Otago, our province, was the poorest province in New Zealand in the early days of our history. But suddenly something happened. Only 12 years after the first people came to Dunedin, the first Europeans rather, the Maoris were already here. They've been here since 1300 approximately, the Middle Ages, about 700 years. Not very long really in terms of world history. But anyway, 12 years after the first Scottish arrived, they struck gold. And that changed Otago, our province, and our city, into the richest province in New Zealand. We went from the poorest to the richest, simply because of the gold rush. The gold was discovered near Dunedin, in fact, at the very first gold rush. To get to that gold field, we could drive there in a car 1 hour, but in the old days it took 1 month to walk over the hills. They made trails so that horses and carriages could come to and from the gold fields to Dunedin. Banks formed early, and to give you an idea of how much gold was found, just a quick rundown. A couple of guys, they went and discovered gold. They spent 3 months with a pick and a shovel and a pan, like a gold pan. You know what I mean? A gold pan on the rivers. And they came back to Dunedin after 3 months, and they had 87 pounds of gold nuggets. One was an Irishman and the other guy was from the US. And the quality of our gold found in New Zealand was of a very high quality. It was very, very pure. Other gold rushes in the world, the gold wasn't quite pure, but our stuff was. Now also the university, residential. All these houses are for students. Probably empty at the moment, most of them. Rugby field on the right. 15 rugby clubs in Dunedin. And this rugby field is surrounded by mostly oak trees. Oak. University graduates there with their cloaks, caps. Most of this architecture here is sort of 1950s and 60s. The old original stone buildings we cannot see there over that direction. Here's a more modern building, laboratory. This university is well known for research, for microbiology. More graduates. There must be a graduation today. They're proud parents and the students with their flowers and everything. Well done, guys. Good on you. This is the only city in New Zealand where the university graduates have a parade through the main street. To the university town. This university is the main one in the country. It's also the oldest, but it is the most important one. It's like the Oxford of New Zealand. And it's got the old buildings like Oxford, all the old stone buildings. We just never got to see them. You've got to walk to get to them, you see. That's our hospital over there. That 1960s concrete building with the helicopter pad on the roof. Dunedin's hospital. But that, in about 5 years' time, will be a student accommodation because we're getting a new hospital. It's getting built now. We're going to pass the construction site coming up, and the cost $1.6 billion. Dunedin is a lucky little city. Here's the hospital getting built on the right. Where that hospital is getting built, all that land used to be the Cadbury's chocolate factory. All of it. But they closed the business, demolished the buildings. And that was a big industry in Dunedin, Cadbury chocolate, from 1868 to 2018. I think they only make the chocolate now in Tasmania and in Melbourne maybe. Folks, when you get off the bus, you can leave things on your chair if you don't want to carry all your bags and stuff. Just leave them on your seat. It's quite busy around here on Saturday mornings, a lot of traffic. So the railway station is just coming up on the left here. It dates back to 1906. Most photographed building in the country. It's the equivalent of, say, the Sydney Opera House in Australia. It's your most photographed building. Well, this old station is ours. From this view, it doesn't look that amazing, but when you see it from the side, I mean from the front, it looks really, really amazing. Made of volcanic stone called basalt, or basalt. And the light stone is limestone. Both are quarried relatively locally from here. Farmers market over there on the left, people selling mostly organic stuff, organic produce. Now we're a little bit cold to grow citrus down here, citrus fruit, but we do grow great pears and apples and stone fruit, mostly inland, away from the coast where it's a lot warmer. It's the fruit growing region, and also cherries, beautiful cherries grown here. Folks, I've got the best possible park here.
These are the big things, not
Dunedin did, when the money started to roll into the city council, imported the best craftsmen in the world to come here to create. Literally, that's what they did. They got the best architects, stonemasons, wood turners, everybody, all the best, mostly from Europe, from Britain and Europe. Now, in the old days, 100 steam trains would come and go to take people all around the countryside. But now it's only used for freight trains and some tourist trains, which is, the old days you could go from Port Charlotte to the city on the train, just like you can on a bus today. Platform, I don't know if anyone went out onto the platform. That's the longest in New Zealand of any platform, 400 metres. During the First World War, when the Otago Battalion left, they left Dunedin from the station, went to Christchurch, got on the ship, went to Egypt and started training in Egypt with the Australian troops. So from that station is where a lot of the troops, or all of them, waved goodbye to mum and dad, little brother and sister. Some of them never came home. There's a lot of memories at that station. Beautiful old courthouse as well here on the right, the Court of Law, Law Courts, and the jail next to the courthouse, just here. The old steam train in there, made in Dunedin. 1957, last one built, 110 tonnes. Modern entrance to an old museum here. One of our museums. This is actually the shuttle bus stop too, so later on I'll be stopping here to drop off people. We're going to stay in town just here later before I go back to the ship. Some of you want to do that. And that is very close to the CBD where all the retail is. Only a 5-minute walk. So that is the spot I'll be stopping. That's where they lay the wreath around that monument. Chinese garden, just here on the left. Dunedin was the first place in New Zealand to have a Chinese community or settlement. That was during the gold rush. Dunedin had the first Chinese mayor of any city in New Zealand back in the early 90s. Dunedin even had cable cars. Like San Francisco used to, we don't anymore. But I'd like to take you up a street where the very last cable car operated. It's quite a steep one, called High Street. In 1957, the cable cars finished. Anybody from Victoria on the bus?
Yes.
Oh, the whole bus. Right. Okay, so I'll take you to Mornington.
Okay.
You heard of Mornington?
Yes.
I grew up in Mornington. Dunedin, Mornington. Really? No, truly. I want to take you there now. My old stomping ground when I was a kid. What you'll notice when we drive up High Street is the buildings, mostly the beautiful old houses. Some of them are really big. A lot of wealthy people in Dunedin in the early days. They made a fortune from the gold fields. Not just the miners, but the merchants, the people who sold things to the miners on the way to the gold fields. They sold food, blankets, pots and pans, picks and shovels, all that type of stuff. So the merchants made a lot of money too. As we get further up the hill, the houses become more expensive and grander. Getting to the steep bit now. Imagine the cable car going up and down in the middle of this road. big mansion here on the left. Look at that one, 3 stories. Big one, behind that white fence. Now have a look down the street here, the view. This next street, just here. Selling Christmas tree. And see how the houses get quite grand at the top of the hill, especially this one here on the right, the brick one, and this one there. I love this one. Imagine the views they'll have over the city. My old primary school used to be here on the right. There's only the War Memorial left, and this is a new housing development. But that used to be the old school, High Street School. And at the top of the hill is Mornington. We're now in Mornington. And I'm going to show you a view looking down into the crater of the volcano. And it's another photo stop, a good one. Just a 5-minute stop. This is the Admiral Byrd's Lookout. Byrd, B-Y-R-D, famous American Antarctic explorer. There's a little monument of Byrd, a bust. And you can see it coming up. Byrd is looking at the South Pole. That's the direction he's looking. See it? I'll go back there and park up. This is where the young people come up on Friday and Saturday night and cuddle up with their girlfriend, you know, looking at the city lights here and the stars. It's a bit like Inspiration Point, you know. Bucket of KFC, you know. No, I couldn't do that when I was a kid because I didn't have a car. I only had a bicycle. And there wasn't any KFC either in those days, so. We're about 120 metres above the sea now. So this is Mornington, folks, and the average house price would be more than 600,000 on this housing area here. These would be 750 maybe, because they're quite big. Good views, and Mornington shops just up here, just in front of us. That's all that's left is that War Memorial, which you can't pull those things down. You've got to keep them forever. So this is the way I walk to school. Beautiful forest to walk. So we'll see my high school. That's still here. You might be impressed with my school. It's not too crowded, it's not too hot or too cold. In the old days, there would have been kiwi birds all through the forest and many other types of flightless bird. But nowadays, there isn't kiwis here. Too many predators like rats and cats and dogs and possums. And all the kiwis are on the other side of the South Island, where you're going tomorrow, in the fjords. That's where they are now. Kiwis are about the size of a chicken. And the egg they lay is 4 times bigger than a chicken egg. lot of speed bumps around Dunedin. We have a bit of a problem with boy races. Do you have that problem in Australia? The young guys in their fast Japanese turbo-powered cars racing around with a lot of speed bumps to control the speed. Quite annoying though, they are. The speed bumps. So this forest is a mixture of native and exotic, like trees from all over the world, from Europe, Britain, States, Asia, everywhere. So it's hard to see new houses in Dunedin, mostly all old ones, but here's a new one coming up just here on the left. On my way to my school, my old high school, there's a redwood tree, which I think is Western USA. And it's it was planted in 1863. This tree coming up. Some of you at the front of the bus can see this big tree coming up. It's actually got 3 trunks, but at the base it's all joined together. 1863. It's at 160 years old. That's the year my school was established, 1863. And the Otago Girls High School was created in 1871, which made it the first all-girls school in the Southern Hemisphere. And coming up is my old school. They're building a new primary school just up here. So that's the big tree. The school I'm going to show you now, the building was redone in 1885 is when it was finished. And it's similar to the railway station with the basalt stone and the limestone. Here's the War Memorial coming up, the entranceway to the school. Now for those that can't really see this school, I'm going to open. Folks, I'd like to give you just one more quick photo stop in the heart of the city, a place called the Octagon, the civic centre of Dunedin. There's some nice old buildings, a statue of Robbie Burns, the Scottish poet, and his nephew was on the first sailing ship that arrived in Dunedin, the Reverend Thomas Burns. Dunedin still has the traditional Highland things like bagpipes, Highland dancing, haggis ceremony, Robbie Burns poetry reading, Caledonian games, all those Scottish things. There's a big strong tradition still. Here's another school, King Edward Technical College. So it's not as old as my school. This is Edwardian, King Edward. My school is Victorian. Queen Victoria. They're much more modern even. Can't really call it modern, but folks on the right, you might see this picture on the tennis court net of these 2 girls. They're wearing wearing the Otago girls' uniforms. Just, you can see a terracotta roof way over there in the distance. It's the Otago Girls' High School. This is their tennis courts. So I'm dropping down to the Octagon. Before we do it, just one more quick. This street here now is the Octagon, so it's an octagonal street. And in the middle of the octagonal street is a circle that goes around one-way circle. St. Paul's Anglican Church on the left, 1918, and the Old Town Hall next to it, 1880. The Old Town Hall. So this is the circle inside the Octagon. There's Robbie Burns' statue with the bird on his head, just there. That's why Robbie has white hair. There's going to be a university student graduation procession by the look of it. People are lining up here, so there's actually nowhere to park here, so that is an issue. Can't actually park. The roads are getting blocked off left, right and centre here, so I don't want to get boxed in. You can watch the procession. That'll probably be starting any moment. The retail best is down that street there. Down there, good retail. Quite busy here. There's something going to happen, that's for sure. Many people from out of town, proud parents. So the railway station and the shuttle bus stop is at the end of the street, folks, for the people who are going to stay in town. You might see the railway station directly ahead of us. To the right is the shuttle bus stop by the museum. Good coffee shop here if you're going to walk up this way. Coffee in here, quite nice. Really nice coffee shops. Tea, coffee, tea. You know exactly where to get the bus back to the ship. Very busy here. See this hotel on the right, this is Art Deco, 1930s. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip stayed in that hotel when they were doing their 1954 coronation tour of the Commonwealth. And the Queen and Prince Philip were on the balcony just here, waving to everybody. 1954 that was. Going past the courthouse, 1902. Similar to the railway station, but you notice the stone is a different colour than the railway station's dark grey. This is more of a lighter grey, but the same limestone embellishments, like the White Cliffs of Dover, you know, in England. We got the White Cliffs of Dunedin. We have a section of our coastline of cliffs that is limestone. That the Maori people of New Zealand apparently came from Taiwan originally. Yep. That's what the anthropologists reckon anyway. The DNA evidence. For the so this modern building is the entrance to the museum. It is quite a long building. Just a few little stairs to get in. There's a ramp, and there's just no stairs. It's really good, really accessible for everybody. So I'm just going to stop here and let you up. So this is where you get the bus back, folks. Right here. $20, remember? You can use a credit card to pay for it or cash. The old church up on the hill there, to our right, is Presbyterian Church. That's the first Presbyterian Church of Otago, the main one for the Scottish Presbyterians. 1875, when it's finished. War Memorial again. And the Chinese Garden coming up on the left. Only one in the southern hemisphere, a rigid, like genuine Chinese garden, built by Shanghai craftsmen. Came over and assembled it all. These old buildings on the right are old warehouse buildings because the ships used to come all the way up to here. This is reclaimed land now we're driving on. Water, 4 square kilometres. Just wasn't enough flat area around the shore, so they had to reclaim land. So it's from this point here, this is the end of the harbour, just here, this wharf. From here to the end is 21 kilometres. Really long harbour. The old steamships used to tie up here. Going past the Chinese Garden, here's a good view of Dunedin with the hills in the background, some of the buildings. See if we can see my old school up on the hill. Looks like a big castle. Dunedin is actually a UNESCO city of literature. It's the only one in New Zealand. It's only one of 2 in the southern hemisphere. To become a city of literature, you have to have a long history of printing, publishing, writing, book binding, and we have that. And Melbourne, Australia is the other one in the southern hemisphere. City of literature. There's only 20 in the world at once. The main one is Edinburgh. That is officially the world literary capital. You got most of the great writers come from there, you know. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Louis Stevenson, you know. Scotland's got some amazing writers. So they're number one. Just spent $7 million recently on restoring the railway station. They replaced all the terracotta roof tiles. And all the window frames, some of them were rotting. They had to replace all the wood. They had to repair masonry. And $7 million they spent. It was owned by the Dunedin City Council. They paid for it. The Dunedin City Council owns big forests just outside of Dunedin. And a lot of those trees we see at the port come from the Dunedin City Council's forests. There's my old school up on the hill, just beyond those cranes there. See it up just, well, it's hard to see, but it's just there on the hill. So that makes Dunedin quite picturesque, you know, having that bush background. Most of the bush is Manuka honey. This is Anzac Avenue, of a living war memorial for the Anzac troops. Beautiful street. Many of us on the bus have lost family members during the Great War, some of our ancestors. I'm sure of it. This is for you. This drive. For your ancestors, I should say. So we have 20,000 students, a large number. That bumps our population up to about 154,000 when they're here. Where do they all live? Well, some of them live in houses, but the first year students have to live in these dormitories. Here's the newest one here now on the left. Nearly, well, it's open already, just been finished, 500 bedrooms. That one. We're still on Anzac Avenue now. Most of these trees would be oak, some ash, chestnut, elm, just mostly the English, the big old English deciduous trees. Crossing a little creek, this bridge, we're going over a wee bridge. This river, it's a small river, was where the very first trout were acclimatised in this country in 1869. Where did the trout come from? Tasmania. Brown trout. Now New Zealand is actually one of the world capitals for fly fishing, called brown trout and rainbow trout. One of the quarries up here. So we've got a 15-minute drive back to the port of Otago now, folks. When we get back there, please have your photo ID and your ship's pass ready. Once you've had that looked at. So from here is 9 kilometres back to the ship. So young people go to Australia to make more money. Then often they'll come back, settle down. We separated, but he works as a driller in the goldfields of. I left when I was 21, headed for Sydney in 1988. Dancing for Princess Diana and Charles. Of some of Australia's greatest names, I was really lucky to have worked with these people. Some of the names, I'll do a bit of name dropping now. Quite proud of this stuff, you know, it's pretty unusual. But some of the early television stars of Australia I worked with. Barry Crocker, Little Patty, Cole Joy, Al Tones, Kevin Johnson, he sung that song, Rock and Roll, I gave you all the best years of my life. Anyway, another one I should remain nameless. I won't actually say his name, but I worked with him too. Tiny Kangaroo Sport, you know who I mean, right? 2 little boys and 2... Oh, definitely not going to sing that one. And then some of the other stars of Australia, Kylie Minogue, Louis Newton-John, John English, Marsha Hines, Jackie Love, yeah, some really great Australian acts. Even did the Black and White Minstrel Show, 1987. And I remember fondly travelling around on a bus around Victoria, and we did 27 towns on our tour. And when I was driving, well, I wasn't driving, I was a passenger on the coach, driving around Victoria, we went to places like, we performed on the old stages of the gold towns. Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, all those old gold towns and the old stages, Black and White Minstrel Show performed. But I remember, it reminded me of my home, driving around the countryside of Victoria. It reminded me of Otago, the rolling hills and sheep, and very much like here. Our economy. How does Dunedin make money? Number one business, education. That's our number one business, the students. Number two business, agriculture and fisheries. We got an abundance of good seafood here. Clams, mussels, oysters, scallops, abalones, crayfish, salmon in the harbour. Other types of native fish. Blue cod is our best fish. Blue cod. Beautiful stuff. Lamb. Wool. Beef. Milk powder. Butter. Cheese. So that's our number two business. Number three, tourism. Lots of things to look at. Number four, forestry. Number five, manufacturing and engineering. That's our top five business. There's still a gold mine, not far from Dunedin. Kiwi fruit, no, too cold. They grow on the North Island. You can't grow kiwi fruit here. We can't grow citrus here. Wheat doesn't grow too well, or corn. It's just not cold enough, hot enough. But we grow great, vegetables, stone fruit, apples and pears. Viticulture, grapes, not in Dunedin, inland. Inland it's much hotter in summer and colder in winter. Perfect for grapes, especially the red wine varieties. But things like oranges and mandarins and kiwi fruit, watermelon, they're all grown in North Island. Some Australian birds live in Dunedin. We have black swans from West Australia live here. The white royal spoonbill birds live here on the coast. And a bush we have rosellas. The eastern rosella, another Australian bird. So that's all. later on you might want to leave the ship and go for a quick walk into Port Chalmers. It's only a 5-minute walk from the gangway. And as I'm driving through Port Chalmers, I'm going to point out some things of interest for you, in case you want to do that. You're probably going to go and have some lunch on the ship now. But if you did feel like a little walk later on, some interesting things in Port Chalmers to look at, a few shops. You might be able to get a souvenir. Or go to the supermarket and try, I don't know, one of our ice creams or an apple or kiwi fruit, chocolate, Whittaker's, the best chocolate to buy, made in Wellington, beautiful chocolate.
After lunch.
About $6 for a big block in the supermarket. And you can also buy Cadbury's. But if you buy the Cadbury chocolate, it's made in Australia. So on the right coming up is a supermarket called 4 Square, just on the right. And just at the top of the hill on the right is the toilets, if you want to go there later. Just past this petrol station. Just here on the right, restaurants. There's a restaurant, Filipino, where you probably won't want to go there. Here's a pub, an old pub on the right, the Portside Hotel. 1880, there's a pretty historical old pub. Coffee shops on the left, arts and crafts, ceramics, jewellery, pharmacy, open, milk bar next to the pharmacy. Another pub on the left, Mackey's Hotel. Coffee shop on the corner here on the left. The old church up that road to the left. And it looks like there's a market open here on the old town hall here on the right. There's a market. You might get a bargain in there. If you didn't have New Zealand money, you could just go to the money machine up the road by the milk bar. So I promised to have you back on time at 11:45. The time now is 11:43. By the time we get through security, it'll be 11:45. I am the master of timing, folks, as you can see.